Hello everyone. Thank you to those joining us today at the webinar. We appreciate your presence and as we delve into an exciting discussion over the next hour. I would like to welcome and thank our speaker, Jarno Van Driel, Philip Archer, and Andrea Volpini for accepting my invitation to join this webinar today. I'm Silvia Fratini, the Partnership Manager WordLift, and today we will explore the GS1 Digital Link transformative potential for e-commerce and retail. So before we dive into the presentation, I would like to inform you that we will have a dedicated Q&A session during the last 50 minutes of the webinar. So you can save your question for the time or post them in the chat as we go along and we address them later. Okay? Without further ado, let's begin. I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Philip. Phil, could you please share more information about your role at GS1, what GS1 is, and the significance of the digital link with us?
Of course. Thank you very much indeed, Sylvia. Hello, everyone. I've been at GS1 now for 7 full years. This week is the end of my 7th year. I know that because I just signed my contract for my 8th year. Before that, I was at W3C, where I had the pleasure of following in the footsteps of people whose names you may know, people like Ivan Herman and Dan Brickley and others. It was because of that experience at W3C that GS1 hired me. I didn't know why at the time. I mean, I was very glad they did, but I didn't know why. It turned out after a few months that the reason they hired me was because they wanted somebody with a web background and a semantic web background to work on this thing that we now call GS1 Digital Link. So that's how I ended up here. I'm happy to be part of this. I think, are we doing other introductions before I start, or shall I jump straight in?
As you wish, as you wish. I can, this is the presentation, so you can go.
Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed, Sylvia. All right, so that history at W3C actually is relevant because I'd just been appointed to become what we call data activity lead, basically looking at all the standards around semantic web and related things. And at the same time, it so happened that my former boss at W3C, the former chief exec, a man called Steve Brutt, had just started work at this thing called GS1 that I'd never heard of. I had no idea what it was. In short, it's the barcode people, but there's a bit more to it than that. And Steve Brutt rang a number of old friends and said, I just got this new job. What would you do if you were me? And one of the people he ran was my old friend Dan Brickley, who you'll know from schema.org. And Dan said, you should extend schema.org to give more detailed product information for all the stuff that has barcodes. Well, that was an interesting idea of his. So what happened then was that there's a whole project began at GS1 called GTIN Plus on the web. GTIN is the one name we give to that number that gets encoded in a barcode. If you're in the States, you might know it as a UPC. Elsewhere in the world, it's known as an EAN. But the collective term is GTIN, Global Trade Item Number. And that call that Steve Brutt had with Dan Brickley led to this GTIN Plus on the web project. But he also called me. And I said, yeah, you should stick those barcodes on the end of URLs. That might work. See if you can do that so they can resolve to something. So GTIN Plus on the web began. You can see a lot of names of people who worked on that. This is before I worked at GS1. I had nothing to do with this. But what they created was a thing called the GS1 Web Vocabulary. And you can see that here. This is our product class, and there's a whole lot of properties and stuff that go with that. And of course, it's all tied into schema.org. It is an extension of schema.org. And we have, in fact, just updated the way that we manage that data and the way that it's published on our reference domain, ref.gs1.org. Lots of persistence, lots of guarantees of persistence and version control on there. So now our web vocabulary is now ref.gs1.org/voc, at which point some people who may be familiar with our vocabulary will be screaming because it's been at gs1.org/voc for, well, since 2014. Don't worry, the old URLs will work. We haven't set it up yet, but they will. And so there will be a transition period of many years when the old URLs will still work. But we do actually want to move people gradually to ref. Now, this webinar was billed as something about GS1 Digital Link. Maybe I should talk about that. So yeah, that was what I said to Steve Bratt back in 2013. I'm not saying I'm the only one that thought of it. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of an obvious thing to do, because all you do, as I say, you take a barcode and you stick it on the end of a URL. That's basically it. That really, at its most fundamental, is what GS1 Digital Link is all about. But there's a funny thing there. There's a 01. Why do we stick 01 after the domain name and before the GTIN, the 14 digits of the GTIN? That actually goes to the heart of the whole GS1 identification system. And a world that, if you're a web person, if you're a semantic web person, if you're a web developer, will be completely alien to you, it certainly was to me, is the world of barcoding, what's called AIDC, Automatic Identification and Data Capture. And that's a whole different world with a whole bunch of different professionals doing their stuff. And at GS1, we use digits, if you like, as our parameter names, as our terms. The reason being, these things are going to end up in barcodes. And you may not be aware of this, but if you encode digits in a barcode, it's much, much more efficient than encoding alpha characters. And in fact, it's more efficient if you have to use alphas, use uppercase alphas rather than lowercase. As you go down that journey from digits to uppercase alphas to lowercase alphas to other characters, the barcode's getting bigger and bigger and bigger just to encode the same number of characters. So use digits if you can, is the short answer. So that's why 01 is the parameter name for what comes next is a GTIN. It's why it has to be in the URL. If you've seen any of my videos, you've seen this particular sequence before. I apologize. But this is what an actual GS1 Digital Link URI would look like. You've got the domain name, you've got the 01, and you've got the 14 digits of the GTIN. And what that means is, if you pass that across a point of sale scanner, it ignores the web bit completely. It doesn't go online. It just extracts the GTIN without any lookup. There's no online lookup for it to go beep at the checkout. And major retailers around the world, major brand owners around the world are beginning to implement this. So here in the UK, Tesco is beginning to do pilots and testing this. I'm glad I can say that in public because we've known about it for years, and now I can say it in public. Tesco is trialing doing this. That's the UK's biggest retailer. Metro in Germany, Woolworths in Australia. The major supermarkets are already beginning to work with this, so you can take that QR code with a GS1 Digital Link, forget the domain name, just take out the GTIN, and it goes beep. It can be on any domain name. And so what we want it to be is on the brand's own domain name, followed by, yes, that 14 digits. It doesn't have to just be a GTIN. You can add a batch number, you can add a serial number, you can add expiry dates and so on. And that's actually part of the business reason for why this is important, because that extra information in the barcode allows you to do things like discounts as products come towards their expiry date. But not everyone likes this. If you're a web person, you may be familiar with Best Current Practice 190 from the IETF. And that basically says, don't do what we're doing. Don't define a whole new structure on top of HTTP URLs, because like we know how they work, right? The server can do whatever it like. Don't try and make things, don't try and invent new patterns in URLs, because that's really a bad idea. You might break the web. I've spoken to IETF about this and apologized. Other people are quite happy about it, like the people behind Skimmer.org. If you keep up with their updates, you may have seen that there's now a new property for products and other things that will accept a GS1 Digital Link URI as a property. So what that means is if you come across on the web a URI that has /01 followed by 14 digits, it's probably, but not necessarily, a GS1 Digital Link URI. Those 14 digits are probably a GTIN. But if you rely on that, you're a fool, because it's a URL. You can treat it, and you should treat it, just like any other URL. That 01 means it's a GTIN, a global trade item number. It might be a location, a company, an asset. There are other details there that I'm not going to spend my time going through today. But essentially what it means is that whole GS1 system of barcoding, identifying products, locations, companies, assets, and so on, can now be encoded into a URI. And I'll finish with this bit where it starts to get a bit more semantic webby. Take a QR code and redirect it to a product information page. Big whoopee-doo. People do that all the time. Almost every QR code you've ever scanned will contain a URL that will redirect you to something. There's nothing new about that. But that orange circle is a resolver service. It has some intelligence. And we can send it commands. We can say to it, you know what? I don't want just what I know what I want. I want the sustainability information. Can you redirect me not to wherever you were going to redirect me, but can you give me the sustainability information? In which case the resolver says, oh yeah, I know where that is. That's at this other target URL. Or maybe you actually do want the product information page. Okay, but you want it in Tamil. So you get it in Tamil rather than whatever other language you may want. Or maybe you just say, do you know what? Let me work this out for myself. Please send me all the links available. And so we use an RFC for that, a fairly recent RFC 9264, as a way to encode the GS1 Digital Link URI and then a bunch of link relation types that then point to specific bits of information that you may want, which may sound a bit familiar to you. You've got a subject, a number of different predicates, types of link, and then you've got those targets. It's just triples. It's just the semantic web, but it's operationalized in a way that we can use online, and you can scan things and get and build apps that will look for particular bits of information. And if you go from that product, that anchor, the barcode as the central identifier, and you follow those predicates, those link relation types to find particular pages, and if those pages have structured data embedded within them, schema.org perhaps enhanced using the GS1 web vocabulary, then you've got triples all the way. Then you've got that barcode, that product identity from the GS1 system there on the web, available for you to use, to manipulate, to use it in whichever way you want to do in a standardized format. And that has a lot of potential, as I'm sure Andrea and Jarno will be explaining very shortly. The slides are available. There's a bunch of links there to various bits and bobs, including tools for you to play around with to make QR codes bigger and smaller. It's amazing how you can make them smaller if you use uppercase letters, that kind of thing, and other links too. But that's my time up. So I hope that gives you an idea of what GS1 Digital Link is. It is part of the global migration to 2D barcodes. We're moving gradually from those stripy barcodes that we've all grown up with, the first one of which went beep 50 years and 1 day ago on the 26th of June 1974. And this move to 2D, I hope, presents you in your world with a lot of opportunity. And I know that some of the stuff that Jarno and Andrea have done, certainly I find very exciting. And let's see what they have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. That was exciting. Thank you so much for the insight. Of course, we're going to share the presentation with the audience, so where I want to also get into the links you put in the presentation, they can do it. Okay, let's pass next to our next speaker, Andrea. My question for you is, tell us, what does Digital Link have to do with SEO? I know it's it's a big question, but I know you're ready. You're ready for that.
I've been working on this. Yes.
I'll show you presentation.
So, that's good. So let's dive into e-commerce SEO and how it connects with what Phil has anticipated. Yeah, you know, I'm Andrea, co-founder, CEO of WordLift. We built a knowledge graph that for e-commerce become product knowledge graph. We do this for automating, improving digital marketing tasks. We're very focused on using product data with generative AI. We're starting to work on semantic search using product data. So we're kind of at the end of the chain. So what Phil has described is kind of the beginning, the foundation of how we make it happen. And we are kind of the last guys at the chain, like kind of using this data and making it helpful for manufacturers and merchants. We build a platform that it's essentially semantic knowledge graph that now has a lot of other components like hybrid search or vector search, model layer where we can fine-tune models using this data, and then a bunch of APIs and workflows for automating your e-commerce. But let's start with SEO because I think that we're kind of in this beautiful space between artificial intelligence, content marketing, and web vocabularies or semantic web technologies. But now we're going to dive into our beloved friend Google, the world of search engine marketplace, and of course. I just wanted to prepare really the floor for Jarno to give us a perspective of the people working in the field. I'm kind of in between because I'm a tool maker. I'm working in the field as well, but I'm kind of trying to bridge different gaps. But so what is happening with Google? And there is a lot of discussion these days. As AI is progressing, and we're starting to see more concrete application of generative AI. We see also a lot of complaints coming in of people using generative AI. So for sure, Google is becoming more and more a marketplace. The business model, the way in which we consume information, it's making Google focusing more on helping people find products. And whether this is good or bad, this is something that we have to deal with. It's an opportunity, if you ask me, and it's also a way in which we start to see that standards, product data, make us less vulnerable from Google in one side, but also more likely to succeed on Google on the other side. I linked a beautiful presentation by Aleida Solis. She's a top-notch SEO, a good friend. If you want to dive into the trends in e-commerce, definitely that's a good start. Google is also becoming a walled garden, and again, luckily or not, Google started as a big highway, and then they started to add, kind of paying gateway or tolls to enter into their properties. And now the experience is more cohesive. And of course, we spend more time on Google search results that are becoming more interactive, more AI driven. And of course, there is a beautiful deck by Barry Adams, who also is an esteemed SEO, that kind of explain this transition, the opportunities that are there, the threats that are there. Google is also using more AI, and then it's getting a lot of more critiques for using AI because, of course, it's a major platform. Everyone trusts and use Google for finding information, and then if Google become the source of information as AI starts to present answer rather than links, then of course there is a lot of critics. There is a lot of spam that Google is trying to fight against. And this is kind of, to give the context of where we are today, when we try to find information online, because we have started that we had, a lot of different gatekeepers, different search engine. When in the early 2000, we were going through multiple search engine, and then all of a sudden there was just Google. And now this is kind of changing again, as far as I can see, because there are different players, and I can get into product data from a chat with the OpenAI GPT, or I can use Microsoft Copilot that is also doing an amazing job in helping me find information. So we have multiple gatekeepers, and of course Google has a key advantage here already, because it has built a shopping graph. Now this is an equivalent of the knowledge graph, but it's built for products. and it's made of over 40 billion products and attributes, and it's AI packed. There are a lot of features, including AI overview, virtual try-ons that have been just introduced 10 days ago in the US, style picks, price tracking, also very new introduction for the summer sale. You can actually look at how price is changing for your desired item. Quick checkout, digital coupons. I mean, Google is becoming a marketplace. All of these is enabled by a piece of technology that it's called the shopping graph, that it's designed around the principle of linked data, even though it's not fully linked data, but it operates as a giant linked data graph. And this is also the role of SEOs is to kind of feed these and try to bring perspective into this shopping graph. So we also are seeing clearly, especially in the US, a transition between product listing pages, category pages that traditionally have been more relevant for SEOs, to product description pages. And again, so the focus is shifting and it's getting closer to the product data that Phil was talking about. And so as consumer, we are interacting with these multiple filters that Google is providing. And so this is kind of an intro to bring it to Jarno, because I have a lot of questions for Jarno that typically are related with what do we do with the digital link? How do you see it from your side, from your angle? I mean, given the context that I provided, how are the digital links going to impact these transitions that I mentioned here?
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. Go, Jarno.
Oh, sorry. You asked me a question. I
I
had a hiccup, so I was just waiting for you to pass on. Apologies.
That's for you. That's for you.
Well, the digital link is something I've been following for a long time already. I know Phil from activities over at schema.org, and there it's been coming along in conversations every now and then for some time now. And what I like about the digital link is that it finally bridges the gap between offline and online experience. Example of that would be, for example, a retail chain that sells clothes. Sometimes you pull out a shirt and you almost have a toilet paper roll of information attached on the label inside that shirt. All that type of information can now be replaced by a QR code, and we are saving the environment by not producing so much trash. And at the same time, that information becomes accessible for a whole lot more people. We don't need to print labels any longer in 25 different languages. So from that point of view, there's already a practical application of the digital link. If I take it even a step further, like the example Phil gave for Tesco's, well, that's one of the examples that's been toying around in my mind. Imagine you walk into a shop and all those stickers on the shelves now suddenly contain QR codes. That implies that by design, shops already know where those products are in the store. But now you can actually double check as a store chain by scanning all those QR codes, and you know exactly where which product is in the store. Well, that helps you with your shopping, your customer shopping experience. For example, a lot of companies like Tesco's produce magazines with recipes. Imagine you walk into a store, you have the recipe open on your telephone, and it tells you where to go into the store to pick those products you need for that recipe. Imagine something is sold out. Because of the accessible information in there, the systems could actually give you recommendations for alternatives. Right there in the shop, you don't have to go home first. Everything becomes real time in the shop. Beyond shopping experience, I'm also thinking about accessibility, especially now I'm getting very closely to 50. Eyes are going backwards. You think small letters become more difficult to read. Well, wouldn't it be great if you simply can scan the QR code and there's everything on your phone in a size you can actually read that information? So, yeah, bridging the gap mostly between offline and actually real life struggles. I think that's what the promise of the digital link might help resolve. The tricky part is getting all those brands and manufacturers on board to start with, because if those products don't have those QR codes, then we're going to have an issue. And if those manufacturers and publishers don't publish that information, we're also going to be stuck. So for a long time, we were stuck between sort of like a chicken versus the egg. Who comes first? So when Phil just said that there are already a lot of companies now getting on board, and I saw a presentation yesterday where I saw huge international global brands getting on board with the QR codes. I was really happy because we're not there yet. It's going to take some years to be implemented globally. But we're now heading towards a path where I think, oh, this becomes really good for the consumers out there. We're going to get options, and more than we ever had before in real time. And that makes me very happy.
Do you see challenges? I mean, as an, you know, in the eyes of an SEO, this is, you know, you see it as an opportunity. I mean, working offline has never been a thing for SEOs. You know, SEOs has always, you know, been primarily looking at optimizing, you know, digital to digital experiences. But what you described, and I also would like to hear what Phil thinks about, you know, the kind of the Tesco use case where you actually you envision a search engine inside the store where, you know, I can immediately find where the product is because the product data is made available by the manufacturers. And I wonder how far we are from getting to that point. And if you see, you know, if Jarno sees as an SEO role to organize and make this information more accessible, and from Phil, if this is really, you know, something that will happen in the near future.
I think we're in the phase of transition. It's happening. Barcodes now exist for 50 years. Yesterday it was news in all over Europe, and I don't know outside of Europe, but I know from within Europe, it was in the news everywhere. Barcodes are going to be replaced by QR codes. It's not a movement that anybody can stop anymore. It's happening right now. As for SEOs used to focus mostly on optimizing web pages. Well, that part of the web sort of is slowly disappearing behind us. We're now entering in a phase where some of the original thoughts behind the semantic web actually are becoming reality. It's becoming a web of data as opposed to a web of websites. So SEOs will need to start focusing more on optimizing data sets. And those data sets are not just limited for Google, it's data sets for Facebook, it's data sets for Google, it's data sets for eBay, data sets for Amazon. Everybody out there wants data sets. Like Andrea also said, the internet, not just Google, the internet is becoming a collection of walled gardens. So to get into those walled gardens, people not only need to start providing structured data sets, they actually need to start worrying about structuring their data. And everybody is always talking about the markup, but it's time a lot of big companies and also smaller companies start making the shift towards actually curating their data in much higher levels of accuracy and at a higher relation rate of maintaining that information. Because if you don't maintain that properly within your organization, how are you going to provide all those data consumers out there? And Google is now moving towards the path of becoming a marketplace, or it has become, but it surely isn't the only one out there. And there are many more ideas being realized as we speak. Imagine if all those QR codes are out there, you don't only need to crawl the web any longer, you actually can get that information right from the store. I can imagine quite some interesting services you can create with that option. So SEOs need to start worrying about optimizing data sets. And SEOs need to be in touch more with the people who traditionally did things like marketplaces. Because there's a lot of knowledge there, but right now, a lot of them still live in separated worlds. And within marketing departments, people need to get together more and share their need for data. Because I've done a project some years back where we digitized an entire marketing department. And when we started mapping everybody's requirements and we were done with that project, the advantage was everybody was now working on one knowledge set, as opposed to everybody doing their own thing, which in practice means everybody's doing the same thing 3 times. And that needs to come together within organizations. So to make the next step really possible, organizations will need to start investing in tools that allows them to curate their data better. And the average CMS system, it just doesn't cut it to make that happen.
There's a whole bunch of different drivers for this whole movement, and you've touched on several, Jana. So yes, brands are aware that they need to make this data available. So partly because they understand that these tools, whether it's an AI tool or whatever search will be in a few years' time, need this information. But the other drivers are things like regulation. So in Europe, it's the big show in town is the digital product passport. There's a version of that coming from the UN CFAC, which could be basically a global DPP. That's aimed more at upstream, so original source materials. But nevertheless, that's some work that I'm involved with as well. In America, it's the Foods, FSMA, I forget what it stands for, Modernization Act, Food Standards Modernization Act. But regulators around the world, these are people. These are men and women who live in the same world that we live in. And they're used to living in a world where they pick up their phone and they can find any information they want. It'd be normal if we were all sitting around having a beer together. That's a good idea. Let's do that. We would, as part of our conversation, I guarantee you're sitting in a bar, you're having a drink, and during that conversation, someone's going to ask a question and someone else is going to take out their phone and find the answer. And that movement to everybody expects to know the answer to any factual question. And so that leads regulators to demand information because they know jolly well you've got it. So making that available in a structured way, whether it's feeding SEO specifically, or I think in modern times it's feeding the AI agents and other systems that suck that data in, is increasingly something that has to be done. The problem is it comes up against the business model of people whose job it is to sell you data. And there are quite large companies who make a profit out of the fact that you haven't got the product data and they have. And they make money out of passing that information from their data source to the retailers. And so there is some conflict there. And so we have to find a way. And I think we have to be sympathetic and find a positive way forward to enable that process that makes the data that should be public. And there's also commercially sensitive data that should not be shared. And I know that as on the web, we think all data should be free, all data should be open, and that's largely true. But if you know that shop gets its supply from that company and that company and that company, you can shortcut. Yeah. So there are real commercial reasons why you actually don't want to reveal the details of your supply chain. Not because you're trying to hide something, but because you're trying to stop being undercut. Also, if you know all the diamonds in the world are in one warehouse at the airport, that's kind of a target for crime, right? There are genuine reasons, there are good reasons why some data should be and is private. So there's that conflict. And we need to be sympathetic and to work with that. The other thing to bear in mind is this transition to QR codes. You did touch on it there. So yeah, you increasingly see QR codes on supermarket shelves. And yes, that's about stock control. It's about the store associate, the member of staff can see what should be there. It's about dynamic pricing. It's about stock control. If the point of sale checkout records the expiry date, which can be in that QR code now using the digital link URI syntax, they know if you've got 50 packs of ham and 30 of them expire today and they sell 30 of them, then they know what's left on the shelf. You don't need to go and check that they're all in date because the ones that are about to go out of date have been sold. It actually reduces time. You can give discounts. You can all those kind of bits of information. Those are the business drivers. That's why it's happening. It's not because they like QR codes. In the apparel business, which you mentioned is a big brand, so Adidas is doing it already, Patagonia is doing it, and so on. You see these major apparel brands and a lot of minor ones as well. On the hang tag, you'll have an RFID chip embedded in the card and a digital link QR code on.
There you go.
So you've got all those different ways of identifying the stuff, whether it's in the store, a consumer can scan it and get the catwalk video, somebody wearing it, whatever it may be. If it's a sports store, you can see that bit of equipment being used by somebody famous. It's that
It helps with
interaction.
counterfeits,
all those things. So lots and lots of business reasons. So don't kid yourself, it's because they like QR codes. It's for hard-headed business reasons to make the supply chain more efficient.
Cool.
Yeah, I like that really from the supply chain reason is a very important driver here. You touched on all those companies selling information that are going to be hit by this.
They fear they will.
Exactly. For one part, I can imagine that fear. Having been on the consumer side at the commerce side of their clients, so to say, the majority of their clients, especially in commerce, is not waiting to take over that job. They're way too happy to buy that information because it's organized, it's delivered in a consistent manner.
Right.
So not a lot of companies out there are really waiting to create 2 or 3 teams of people just to digest all those different product feeds. They're happy to buy that stuff. But for shops, I think it's going to be really important those data companies start providing those digital links in their data sets. Because for the average shop owner out there, it's going to become impossible to get their hands on that information unless they start to scan their entire assortment themselves. And that's sort of like defeating the point of this. So yeah, the data providers will need to start providing those digital links in their shop feeds, and manufacturers obviously should participate in this, but they have already good motivation through supply chain technologies.
Good. Yeah, I will kind of walk you through now on a few use cases for product data that we are familiar with, and also today's the day we're going to announce that we're also supporting the GS1 Digital Link, and we are deploying already these links. So it's pretty exciting time for me. We kind of organized it in such a way that we had the first digital link coming out a few days before this webinar. But let's make a step backward and try to see, okay, pretty much what both Jarno and Phil anticipated. I mean, we are sitting in a bar drinking a beer or whatever we're doing. Most probably someone is going to ask a question. I think curiosity is not gonna it's not gonna go away. Humans will remain curious animals. But the way in which AI is currently playing within the customer journey, and here I'm representing what it's typically known as the messy middle. So the purchase journey that a consumer over a digital channel will travel in order to find the product or the service that he or she needs. It's pretty convoluted already with traditional search. But what we're seeing with the use of AI overview and with the use of Copilot is that in comparison to traditional search, this messy middle, this customer journey, it's getting faster because AI is providing means of sifting more information that a regular user would do, or what I would do with I don't know, maybe 5 searches is can be done just with one single interaction with a Copilot that would do that searches for me. And so this has, of course, an impact on how we consume information and how valuable the data is behind the web page. And Jarno already said it very clearly. Web pages are pretty much gone, or they will be gone, or the role of web pages is I mean, web pages will be there, but don't worry about it. But the role of the web pages in these customer journey and in the use of information retrieval is definitely going to change. Now, in generative AI has a lot of promises, but it has also a lot of issues. And recently, I'm starting to look at also research in neuroscience and how we're kind of getting to the point where maybe thoughts and reasoning are independent from language, and language models are trained on language, and so that might be the case where, you know, in order to make a machine that can actually reason for us, maybe we don't need just to train it on language. And of course, you know, what we're trying to do in general in this area is to combine the traditional symbolic AI, or if you want, semantic approach with, you know, with the statistical model. And you know, here on the chart, I have an artist that I'm very fond that I discovered recently, which is called Harold Cohen. And in the, you know, in the 60s, he started to build a machine that can draw. But in order to make this machine that can draw and paint for him, he had to design rules and say, okay, well, this is how a hand is built. And so that the machine could actually make the drawing, whether, you know, right now we work with these transformer-based models that are getting a lot of data and try to approximate how they perceive reality. And it's a fascinating time because there is a lot of things that we can do with language models, but there is a lot more things that we can do with language model complemented with semantic data. And so I'm just going to quickly dive through a few use cases that we've been focusing on. In general, we preach a lot the fact that brands need graph data so that they can share it through the, you know, QR code and other means. But most importantly, they need it because they will, in this way, create their own long-term memory and therefore, you know, build better customer experience through AI. And so we're building, you know, a lot of knowledge graphs for brands around the world. In general, of course, as we discussed, the problem that we have right now when we look at optimizing e-commerce and you know, products that are on the shelf is that you know, until yesterday, data is not linked. Now the QR code it's bringing this opportunity, but still remains the problem. Where is the data coming from? And so at the same time, consumers are pretty much connected, and you know, and we can see that, for example, the features like the virtual trade-on that has been introduced by Google. It's and this is also a very interesting paper that they recently published about how they can simulate a body in order to make these you know, kind of try-ons more natural, whether you are on the store, you know, or you are on online. I think the point is that there is a lot of need for consumer to move back and forth, and offline and online are going to be very archaic way of differentiating a customer experience. There's not going to be, you know, a transition between online and offline as we've seen until now. So when we look at the data angle, and of course how we build the product knowledge graph and how we build the data that then needs to be attached to the QR code, we really see that whether it's Google or Amazon, you know, the more we combine around the graph information about the product, the more we can you know, answer to the questions that the consumer, the supplier, the shop assistant might have about the product. And so whether these, you know, the certification or its reviews or its FAQ or if it's a 3D model, you know, we need to make these data accessible and of course interoperable, because the other big point is that, you know, maybe, you know, all of the brands have data, as Phil said, you know, brands don't have problem with data. The problem is that the data is not interoperable in most cases. And we see it typically on the e-commerce case that, you know, reviews are on Trustpilot or Better Voice or other places. And therefore, if someone in the shop needs to consume the review, well, either it goes on Google or, you know, it's stuck. But if we can, you know, attach the reviews that the brand is collecting about each and every product and kind of binding these to the QR code, then this becomes accessible inside the shop. And this becomes, you know, accessible regardless of the gatekeeper, regardless of the marketplace, whether it's Google or Amazon. So this also empowers brand, empowers also the merchant, because as a merchant, I want to create a better experience. And if I have better data from the brands, then, you know, potentially I can create a better experience for my consumer. So I think that the data angle, it's bringing value. For us, it's easy to measure also that it's rewarded by Google. And so we can prove that, of course, better data will turn into more sales and better interaction with the customer base. In general, building a product knowledge graph, like this is Boglioli, it's actually a fashion brand in Milan, and I don't know if we have in the webinar Giovanni from the Level Group, but this is one of our partners where we work the most in the fashion sector to build this product knowledge graph for fashion brands in Italy and in other parts of the world. And so building a product knowledge graph, it's kind of the foundation of creating this product data, aggregating, different data points, and then making it interoperable. And then, of course, we can use these for, letting the consumer interact, whether it's using, Google Lens or, Amazon Visual Search or Microsoft Copilot, because it's all linked, it's all accessible and interoperable by different means, whether it's structured data, schema markup, or it's the merchant feed for Google or the merchant feed for Bing. There are multiple ways now that these product data can be actually shared with the different marketplaces. Of course, the fact that Phil was brought into this picture is also why I got into the picture as well, because the fact that linked data and semantic web technology has been chosen, as Phil was telling the story in the beginning, as a foundation for this digital link makes it extremely accessible for many people, and it's open. And that's, I think that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful opportunity for everyone that wants to, build value on top of product data. So today we are announcing that we are creating Digital Link using the GS1 Digital Link URI standard already for brands like Boglioli and actually many others. Basically, everyone that has a product knowledge graph with WordLift will get GS1 Digital Link. And of course, we're still, working in order to optimize the implementation, make sure that we get all the filters that Phil was sharing. We've been lucky enough that Phil has been working with us in the past 2 years in order to introduce the concept, kind of get the idea. And so right now, if you get WordLift, build a product knowledge graph by connecting to your Google Merchant Center, we will automatically create a GS1 Digital Link URI. Now, the beauty of this Digital Link is that by design, because of our platform is a link data platform, are natively digital link. So we actually use the digital link as the entity ID for the product. And this was not given, so it's kind of a decision that we've taken. And then we are automatically implemented these in the schema markup using the GS1 Digital Link property that express the same value, so that we can reference the entity ID, which is a GS1 Digital Link, also through the schema property that recently has been introduced. So there is a knowledge graph behind. It's dereferenceable based on the link data specification. So if your product is, for example, on Wikidata, we can create a connection, and then it can be we can run federated queries from one graph to another, and this opens a tremendous number of different opportunities. Now, we are primarily focused on using this data for AI content experiences. So one thing that we do with this product data, for example, is creating specialized, personalized product description for product variant. We found that this is good for the consumer. As Jarno was also saying, this is good for the accessibility, because the product can be described in each and every variant. So if I have a green polo shirt, a size XXL, I would get specific description for that. And then of course the other use case that we're pivoting a lot. This is our AI agent, is to use this product data for creating product highlight. Product highlight is a feature that now Google is using within the merchant feed. Basically, it's a set of bullets that highlights the main characteristic of the product. It will be very intensive to do this for brands, but we can fully automate the process using generative AI and the knowledge graph. And last but not least, we've been now working on semantic search. So we finally get to the point where we can find the right wine, and we can do this in very fine detail. So we can get a red wine vintage 2022 from the region of Abruzzo, and we now have this wine partner, and we have build the first GPT, and now it's going to be also Microsoft Copilot experience. And we can also, of course, go full on with multimodality, so I can finally find, a good wine that matches the artichoke from Rome. This is a very typical Roman dish. And this is, the way in which we build, a semantic search that works, and this technology are finally working. It's by using, semantic data behind. So once again, the fact that we're using the GS1 vocabulary efforts and extending that, much like, GS1 has been extending schema. Now we are extending schema ourselves in order, for example, to describe properly wine. Because if you don't describe a wine, your semantic search is just not gonna work. And to the extent that you want to make these application work for the consumer, then you want to work with data, because that's all you have. That's how you communicate. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I can see that we have a lot of questions piling up. So I think that I would let the floor to Phil and Jarno. And kind of look a little bit of the questions that we have. And of course, you have here a QR code for getting, the discount and build your product knowledge graph.
Thank you, Andrea, for your insights. So let's get through some questions we have from the audience. So first one, Jenny Hill. Is there a tutorial for creating the editable QR code for GS1 to use on product service PDF? Who want to go?
I can answer that a couple of ways. Hi, Jeannie. Nice to be here with you. So I've got to click some buttons here so I can post a URL in the chat. I'm not sure I can do that. No, I'm not going to do all that now. I'm going to post it to Sylvia, then she can put it in. I think in the general chat. Thank you, Sylvia. I just sent you a link to the current best answer to your can you build a digital link URI. It's not the best one. The reason I'm hesitating to point it out to you is because it does actually generate a number of different 2D codes, but they're not ones that you would use. The syntax is right, but it's a little bit out of date. The much better tool that we have doesn't yet do the building. It can do the parsing and the checking, but not the building. The slides, which I know Sylvia will be sharing, includes a link at the end to a thing called the barcode syntax resource, which is a production grade set of tools that does a lot of work with our different syntaxes, including GS1 Digital Link, but it hasn't yet got the equivalent of the thing I just linked you to, where you can put in GTINs and so on and generate the thing. So we're working on it, but it's not there yet. So that's sort of got halfway there for you. I'm sorry.
No problem. So let's get through the other question. Let's see. This is the next one. Can you recommend free open source tools to create, validate such knowledge graph apart from JSON Playground?
Well, knowledge graph is a big of a loaded word here. If you're talking specifically about markup in pages, there's a Google's rich resulting testing tool. There's schema.org validator. Yandex still has a validator out there. Then there's the structured data linter that also checks your markup. But I would be careful to state those actually create or validate knowledge graphs. They create graphs to help you check the graphs you create on a per page basis. But that doesn't necessarily mean you automatically created a full-blown graph. In my mind, a full-blown graph connects a whole lot of different resources together. So when you're talking about a graph from a website perspective, I would say the graph would be the overall representation of everything the site entails. And there are, as far as I know, no open source tools out there that help you check such environments, because mostly you would have to import that type of information into an RDF type database. And then you can have all kinds of tooling to check and manipulate the information in there. But again, that's beyond what you do normally do for websites. It's more at the data engineer level where this happens.
Okay, great. We have another question from Jenny. How can we track user SERP AI try-ons in addition to price tracking? Who want to go for that?
I'm not sure we have an answer for that. I mean, I know that right now this data is not available in Search Console, although we are starting to see people testing, if there is a lift in the impression that it's beyond expected, that might entice the fact that people are, kind of hovering or looking at, your products through the SERP without making a click. So a lot of these recent AI-driven feature are, kind of triggering a high number of impression and a low number of clicks. And so when that happened, I think Brody Clark has done recently a test on AI overview related to his website, and it demonstrated that whether it was not clearly visible from Search Console, we could see a spike for that page on the impression. I would expect that something happens, with the impression related to the product snippets that we can at least now clearly see from Google Search Console. So definitely, I'm, as Google transition into a marketplace, I'm becoming more accustomed with the idea of looking at these product snippets, filters in Google Search Console. We recently saw also the fact that you can actually track the images related to the shopping tab. And again, this is a way in which you can try to see impression. But yeah, try-ons has been introduced, I think, on the 14th of June in the US. And recently there are some tests in Australia. We haven't seen it in Europe at all. So it's quite new.
I'm running some case studies right now revolving the new product variant markup, and we're seeing the same things there. Sure, Search Console has, like Andreas said, recently introduced a new image report. But if I take it, for example, from the Google Merchant Center side of things, well, I've been looking at some accounts over the last week, and it's really terrible. We barely get any information in there yet. Now we can scream at Google, make that happen. I think that's a bit of a large demand right now. The impression I have is that they're most of all really working very hard over there to get it all to work. And creating reports and automated reports for us as users out there, I think it's a bit early, not because they necessarily do not want to share, simply because they haven't gotten around to it yet. I'm pretty sure we'll get new reports as time moves on, and I'm actually sort of impressed by what they've given us so far.
Thank you.
Is it enough? Not yet.
Think so. And then Mark says, this is not a question, but I think it's interesting to share also with you. Inventory and supply chain management with these standards helps with review, and that directly helps with the trust with offline and online experiences, which helps SEO. So this is...
It makes sense. I think we totally agree the fact that, the more we make information move back and forth, the more, we increase trust. And when we increase trust, then things happen. It's hard to measure, though. Of course, yeah.
But I think that's actually part of the answer to a question we get from some of our brands that we talk to. They say, we've already got a QR code on our product that already does everything we want it to do, because it takes the consumer to whatever experience they want. And so the question they ask then is, why should we bother to change what's in that QR code to this GS1 Digital Link format? And that's actually quite hard to answer, to give them a really strong business reason for doing it. But we can say that in the future state, it's all part of the supply chain. That becomes your barcode. To which they say, yeah, well, let me know when you've done it, and then I'll do it. Right? Everybody wants to be second. Nobody wants to be first. But I think, that comment, Mark, is helpful, because the distinction between online sales and offline sales, as this group particular knows perfectly well, is such a blurred line. So it's helpful to see that. Thank you.
Moreover, I think that because of the introduction of the product groups, because of the introduction of the GS1 Digital Link in the merchant and in structured data, we do not have any evidence yet, right? We cannot say that because I have a GS1 Digital Link on my schema, I'm selling more products. But we do have evidence that we can sell more products online when we add a G team, if the G team was supposed to be there and it was missing. So I think that in a way, the digital marketing can be first in the adoption of some of this technology. And even today, I had a discussion with Google about hard cases and how we are really seeing this traction when we had a G team that wasn't present on the Google Merchant or structured data. So I don't know what is going to happen with product variant. I know that Jarno is kind of building on the testing there, and we will see something as well, I think, in the coming months. But it is clear that making it easier for Google to build its own shopping graph works in terms of reward and confidence that Google has to pass on traffic on long tail queries that are very specific to the consumer.
Personally, I'm most of all happy that the digital link also provides us with a good reason to start making use of the GS1 vocabulary.
Yeah.
I've used it myself in the past to help redesign the data structures in ERP systems, for example. It's a great vocabulary to help design your data sets. But it's been difficult getting implementations out there. And then this digital link and the information the GS1 vocabulary provides actually is information consumers want, especially in that mix between on and offline shopping. That's where I think the vocabulary from the GS1 has a role to play yet still.
Yeah, I think the certification is a good example of attributes that GS1 has introduced, and now we have on e-commerce shops. Now we do have clients that can benefit and benefit from the work that GS1 has done for saying, hey, this product is certified vegan, or
it's also taken on a much more higher profile within GS1. And just a quick plug, if anybody wants to join the working group that manages that vocabulary, you're very welcome to do so. It's completely free and completely open. Please join.
You have a link, sir.
I do, but I'm not able to post a link unless Sylvia does it for me.
Sylvia can do that. All right. Well, unless there are other comments or questions, I think that we can wrap it up.
Andrea, I think I have a problem with my sharing. I sent you the link. I don't know if you can share it for a sec.
I can definitely do that. So I will
Sorry,
share.
Phil.
That's all right. I'm just amazed that I'm able to do this from a motorhome on the west coast of Wales, just using my phone as a hotspot, and it works. That's incredible, isn't it?
It's beautiful. Also, I mean, you probably have the best background of all of us. We just cannot see it.
In the meantime, we have another question. Maybe we have time to also answer to that. So Jenny says, do you see GS1 as a benefit to not retailers?
This is a tough one.
Well, we're known as the barcode people, but we're actually a standards body for the supply chain. That's actually what we do. And so we don't just deal with retail. We deal with wholesale and asset management as well. We're all over healthcare as well. We have different identifiers that you don't normally come across that we're now putting into that. Sorry, careful how I say this because I'm being recorded. We are looking at the possibility of working more with verifiable credentials. So your GSRN, your Global Service Relationship Number, which is another GS1 identifier, could be used, for example, in a hospital to prove that you are qualified as the surgeon to cut this patient open. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that that are nothing to do with retail, but is part of the GS1 system. And it all comes down to that global unique identifier.
I have one last question for Phil or Jarno. In regards to the GS1 Digital Link, as a merchant, where do you see the value of using the the GS1 Digital Link, if any? And would a merchant like the wine marketplace that I presented before had any benefit on creating their own etidica.it/01 link data URI, which in any case we're building for them, so they will get them. But is there any benefit that you can envision for a merchant in using the digital link?
I have an answer, but I've been answering it for years. Jano, what's yours answer for that, if you have one?
First of all, those types of merchants, manufacturers even, they need to provide their data to resellers as well. They often do that in forms of PDFs and XML feeds, and you name it. Well, this resolves it all. You just publish your information in one place and you're done. You don't need to have different outlets any longer.
Right. But as a merchant, if you are the merchant and let's assume you have received that information, you have it in your e-commerce, is there a benefit for you to create your own GS1 Digital Link, or should you instead reuse the brand GS1 Digital Link?
So my answer to that is the merchant wants to tell you different things than the brand does. And one of the objections we have from retailers is, oh, you're putting lots of QR codes that point to the brand owner on the products on my shelf. I want them to come to my website. I don't want them to look up the price of the same thing in another shop down the road because that's my competitor, to which you say they can do that now, right? It's not particularly hard. And so one of the early things we said right from day one, because there is that structure of the URL, if it's got brand.example, if you're using that particular merchant's app, you can scan it and it takes out the brand's domain name, puts in the merchant's domain name, and then you get information from the merchant about that product. That's one way that you could do that. So yeah, it's merchants, of course, want to talk to their customers as the merchant, not necessarily as a brand. And having that standardized way of doing it also makes it easier for SEO and AIs and everything else, because then you can find the merchant's version of that story. And that's what
my vision is exactly this, and that's how I explain it. I just want your confirmation. I mean, for example, product reviews, the reviews of that product that you might have on your shop are different than the reviews that the brand might have, about that product. And so, because the reviews are typically very characteristic of the type of consumer that you attract, and so would you envision a system where as a merchant I have to point back with the same as the MTD on the brand, or how do you see this progressing?
Whether it should be same as or see also, I'm not sure, because and same as you know perfectly well, I know, as a very specific semantic of this thing is exactly the same thing as that. That is different identifiers.
It's not exactly the same. Yeah,
it's not exactly the same because a merchant will present it differently. Yeah. So I think actually the semantics we might want to think about that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think. Good. Well,
I think in the end, it's most of all important if you look at the overall picture and everybody involved around those products from production to selling them. It's not, especially if you look at it from an SEO perspective. Why would I publish this information on my website? Well, it gives those search engines you're chasing entry points to the information you're providing. So you allow them to find as many different angles as possible to be able to validate what you're stating on your website is true. And data accuracy and being transparent about where that information is coming from and provenance about the data you're throwing into the world, those are things that will become increasingly important. More and more companies out there are going to be publishing information. So if you're not part of that rat race to make sure you're the one that provides the best information, the most interlinked information, it could well be you're trailing behind in a few years' time. Transparency and actually linking the data and making everything verifiable is going to be more and more important, not just from search, but also from a law perspective. The EU is working hard on that, to making a lot of things traceable for a lot of good reasons. So yeah, make sure that information is verifiable if you publish it on your site, because that's going to be an important factor to play with that comes into play.
Cool. Phil, in the meantime, I was able to share the link you sent it to me.
Yeah, thank you. So that's just one I didn't include in the slides, and I'm a little bit cautious about it because, as I say, it's a bit out of date, but it will give you a good idea. If you just hit the so we just hit the top there, it says use example data.
Yes.
If you hit that, then it will give you an example. And you scroll down, then if you scroll down, then hopefully, then if you click there's a button there that says generate barcode, then you will see that you get all the different syntaxes that we have out and comes out with the proper GS1 Digital Link URI and some examples there. It does say at the top, and I'll say it out loud, do not use this for production purposes. This is for demo only. Those QR codes and other codes are not of print quality. Don't try and use it for real.
Okay. That's great. That's great. We will share. Thank you. Okay. Okay, then. So time is up. I want to thank you again, all of you, for this powerful webinar. We get a lot of information now. We need to process all of them, but the video will stay online. So in case anyone wants to rewatch it. So thanks again, and wish you a good day to everyone.
Thanks, Sylvia. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.